Christina's joining us from Office of Human Resources because she's helping us with a project that you will learn more about in the upcoming weeks. And we thought it would be good for her to hear what some people's questions are so she can help us as we move forward. So Christina, can you wave so everybody sees where you are?
Excuse me. Didn't mean to cough as I unmuted. Nice to be here today. Thank you, Sheri, Ashley, for inviting me to listen to the questions and participate in the conversation as needed. So,
thanks.
All right, shall we jump in?
I was just gonna say, Ashley, we didn't talk about how we were gonna do this.
I can kick us off. Yeah, no worries. Yeah, so thanks all for joining. I know that this was kind of set up a little bit last minute, so I appreciate all of you if you had to rearrange schedules, but thanks for being here. We wanted to hold a couple sessions to talk about performance management this year because, I mean, we don't even need to say this year. It's just been really tough. And so we wanted to provide some guidance to both supervisors and staff for how to approach performance reviews this year. So we put together a document that hopefully you all saw, had a chance to take a look at. And really, this is just going to be kind of an informal conversation. We'll answer whatever questions you have to the best of our ability, and just wanted to basically provide space for you to ask those questions. So for asking, you can feel free to pop them in the chat. I'll be looking at that, or unmute yourself and ask. Either one is good for us. So yeah, we'll just kick it off. And you know what, while I'm thinking about it, I will pop that document in the chat just in case you don't have it up yet. So what questions do you have about performance reviews this year?
You know what, Ashley, before we start with that, why don't I give a little background about the document?
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, so this document was initiated by the Office of Human Resources. Well, I shouldn't say it was initiated. The HR leads were talking about how to help supervisors and employees do performance evaluations this year. And Mani Vang in CEHD put together a document that, and then worked with the Office of Human Resources to come up with similar guidelines as we've got here. I took them and tweaked them for the libraries so that it would focus more or less on, for example, what our engagement results were, what our engagement results said we could do better or on. So it's most of the document is the same as what the Office of Human Resources is distributing. And as Ashley said, this is an opportunity to say, okay, so how do we do this? Do you have any questions? There will be more information forthcoming regarding process. That'll come out in February when we do our usual kind of kickoff to performance evaluation. But we wanted to do this earlier so that people were thinking about what they needed to do in the next couple months. And I'm pretty sure that half of you were hoping that would be a performance evaluation period this year. But that is not the case. We have one. And I'm sure another question that will come up is, what do I know about merit? I don't know anything about merit. We're hoping, asked Ken Horstman about that a couple weeks ago. And Ken said they're hoping that there will be some sort of merit, but they have not come to that conclusion yet. So right now we just move forward with our evaluation system as is. And I know that before I got here, we had a couple years where we didn't have merit, or we didn't have merit and then the next year we did, and then we didn't have merit and then the next year we did. And I know the libraries did some type of averaging system in order to figure out what the merit rating would be. We haven't talked about that yet because again, we need to find out what the merit, if there is merit, and then I'm sure we'll figure out how we're going to incorporate last year's ratings and this year's ratings into a scale of some sort. So that's what we know. If people have questions, that would be great. Otherwise, we can zip through the form a little bit and maybe that will bring about questions. This is is that what you think, Mary? I saw Mary's thumb go up, so, all right. So let's start with the form that says performance evaluation guidance for 2020-2021. We will not, well, let me do this. Probably would help to share my screen, right?
Can you share your screen, Sheri?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
I think we're mostly in it too.
Are we? Okay. Oh, yep, looks like, well, there's 13. Okay, we're good. So the link for you may also find these questions and topics helpful. We're going to do that second. So first we'll just go through the document. Really, what we're wanting to do is to tell people the purpose of the evaluation, performance evaluation beyond merit. And I think, when the majority of us think about performance evaluations, we think about it related to our merit rating. But there are other aspects to performance evaluations and performance management. We want to make sure that we are doing what we should be doing as it relates to the mission of the university. Also, not only the university, but your department. That's where we're talking about goals and the library's goals. And I know that we're in the middle of our strategic planning process. So we're still, there's even more up in the air, but we all had goals from last year. And I'll get to what that means as a result of the pandemic, et cetera. Also, we're looking at it from a talent management perspective. How do you help your employees grow? Sometimes that gets forgotten as we go through this process. What do they need? What else do they want to do in their careers? In some cases, it may be something that is outside of their current job. How do they get to a different job? I know we have some library assistant 2s and 3s that are highly educated, very smart people. And, I'm fully aware that this is not necessarily a career, that's not a career position for them. They have higher aspirations. And so how can we help them reach some of those higher aspirations? Also, everyone on here wants feedback, right? We all want to know how we're doing. We prefer positive feedback, but the developmental feedback is also very helpful because it helps us know what we need to do differently. So as a part of this, you're also providing feedback to your employees. When you're talking to them, you should include the good, the bad, and the developmental. Now, I want to have a caveat here. Remember, we shouldn't be talking about performance issues. The first time an employee hears about a performance issue should not be at their performance review. You may be updating, talking about how their performance is doing related to a performance issue, but please, please, please do not make that the very first time someone hears that they've got an attendance issue or that they're not meeting their goals. That should be something we're talking to people all throughout the year. But the performance processes, are we meeting our mission? How are we developing our employees? Giving our employees feedback and then recognizing and appreciating what they're doing. There's a link in the document about recognizing and rewarding good work that you'll see is from the Office of Human Resources. All right, so now we're at the evaluation part. how do we evaluate our employees who have been working hard in this environment? You know, some of them have had to completely change what they're doing. Some people have had to completely change where they're doing it. Then we have our people that we have said have to be on site. And so what we're doing today, I have a feeling looks nothing, whether it's the environment, the location, looks nothing like what we did a year ago. So if you think about it, we all want to go, okay, all of our people are excellent because they all pivoted to this new environment. But remember, that's only one part. So we've all had to pivot, but how well did we pivot? We want to make sure that we're recognizing that everyone made this great pivot and is able to work from home or has been helpful and coming in and working on site. We need to recognize that, but remember that that's only one part of their work. So how have they been doing their work as it relates to their current environment? So just keep that in mind. I mean, I know I want to give all my people the highest rating I can because of all the work they've had to do. But sometimes I have to sit back and go, how well did they do that work? Which I'm not going to give you a hint at this point. The other thing we need to do, hopefully you've been talking about goals throughout the year and adjusting them. But now is a good time to take a look at the goals that your people have. Think about whether they need to be adjusted. Think about whether they're relevant anymore. I'm trying to think of I know that in Libraries HR, we've talked about moving our HR personnel files online. I think that has been in Zhang's goals for the last 2 years. Well, that didn't happen because we need the help of OHR to do that. So that's one that we absolutely had to pause. So it's just looking at the goals, seeing if they need refreshing. See if the intent is still the same. You know, I know ILL has changed a ton. You know, does the intent of the goal need to be tweaked? Also, focus on reasonable expectations. That's more or less where we start coming into the social and health issues, mental or physical, that have happened this year. So it doesn't mean people shouldn't have goals. It means what are our reasonable expectations for people to meet those goals? Whereas we may have said, okay, you should be able to reach that goal within 6 months. That may not be logical right now. It may take longer because of the variety of things that are happening. People taking care of themselves, people taking care of family members losing jobs, all of the mental, physical, social issues that have taken up a lot of time and space in our heads and in our work environment. So again, doesn't mean we shouldn't have goals. It just means be realistic. And then also talk about this is a good time to talk about what are your values or your cultural expectations in your team, your department. An example was last week, and Ashley wasn't at this meeting, but I asked Lori, Zhang, and Kathleen. I have never met with them on a weekly basis. I meet with Ashley every week, but I've never met with Lori, Zhang, and Kathleen on a weekly basis ever in the 6 years I've been here. And so I said, am I missing something here? Do you guys want to meet individually? We meet together, but do you guys want to meet individually? It was a resounding no, because our issues are more immediate. They do not want to wait to meet with me on a weekly basis. They want to be able to chat me. They want to be able to set up meetings and take care of the issues right away. So that's kind of a culture communication situation for our department. Ashley's work is different than Lori, Zhang, and Kathleen's. And then, last area on this form is keys to success. And they're really being intentional, being human, and being transparent. If you don't know something, you don't know. See if you can find out. Be human. I think if anything, we've all been more human than normal this last year. I know I've had situations where I probably wouldn't have been as human in the past. And then, being intentional. Think about how you can incorporate diversity, equity, inclusion in your work and in the work of the people that you supervise. If you're a supervisor, are there goals that people can do? And just know that Ashley will be talking more about ideas for goals as we get closer into this process. We've got a presentation or some documents similar to what we did last year that she'll help saying, here, if you can't think of goals, here's 3 areas in which talk to your employees, or you as an employee think about what would your goals be in development, diversity, access, inclusion, those kind of things. So there'll be more coming on that. Any questions so far? Thoughts?
Sheri, we had one question come through the chat. What if an employee doesn't fill out the evaluation?
So here is, I have a lot of thoughts on that. The performance management process, from my perspective, is more about the conversation. You have to document, certain things so that you know what you said and the employee understands what their goals are. If the employee doesn't fill out their evaluation, my first question would be why? Why didn't they? And that's apparently where you need to start having the conversation. Was it because they didn't know what to write? Is it because they didn't have time? If they didn't have time, how can you make it easier? Know that we have a number of libraries employees who love to write. They absolutely love to write and talk about what they have done all year long. I mean, I have seen performance evaluations that go into the multiple pages, which if that is your jam, you want to write all that down, I'm not going to stop you. But I'm also not going to require that. For the most part, the only people that read these performance evaluations are you and your supervisor. If you were to apply for a different job, another supervisor might take a look at it. But otherwise, they go into your personnel file. And so if you can say what you need to say and people can say what they need to say and get across to their supervisor in bullet points, I'm okay with bullet points from an evaluation standpoint. But yeah, if the person hasn't filled out their evaluation, we probably should ask why. Okay. All right. Actually, just interrupt if you see questions.
Will do. Looks like.
Yep.
Go ahead, Eric.
Are there going to be changes to the evaluation form this year?
Oh, I'm sending that to Ashley. I know the answer, but I'll let her talk.
No, not for this upcoming performance evaluation period. So we'll be using the same form that we did last year and the same process that we did last year. So if you remember, it was Google Docs, and we kind of did an attempt to make it easy to do virtually. So we'll still be doing that for this year. I'll give a slight teaser. Goals will be a little bit different.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I remember something about the labor representative form will be changing in a previous conversation. Am I correct?
So nothing is changing. Oh, they don't do their evaluations till June, right?
Yeah, and we've been using that 25-year-old form, and as you know, we've brought up changing it over and over in the Labor Management Committee, which is not met in a long while. But for whatever reason, I have a memory of our saying something about the labor people would be using a same or similar form to what the civil service people will be using.
That is correct. They will be, but for this year, everyone maintains the same format they were using for last year. But moving
Okay,
forward,
it's coming.
It's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Yes, the one group where it is still outstanding, and this is why Christina is on this call, because she is a part of our implementation team on the new process. But the one group that is still outstanding about whether they will change or not is the individuals in the librarian series. We're still thinking about that one, or I should say they are still thinking about that one.
Mhm.
Good questions.
Other questions?
So if not, we can take a look at the link that says you may find these questions and topics helpful to review during the performance review meeting. These questions were also started through the same process as the first page we went through. And really, I wish we would have had this all along, because I think it helps start conversations. It's not necessarily just for this year, but I think about new supervisors or managers, and I think this would be a really helpful document for people to start, when they're having conversations. So that's what this is. It is just questions that can be asked by the supervisor or the manager, and or employees can take a look at this, and as they're trying to figure out what to write or how to express their year, they can look at these questions and answer them as part of their responses to their performance. Thoughts? Are these helpful? Is this just, okay, you're not telling me anything new, and that's okay. I'm fine with that, because then we know it. Hi, Jackie.
I think these are helpful. We actually, the Arnold managers have talked over the last few years about our individual processes around the performance evaluation, especially when it comes to the labor represented group, because there isn't really that guided process in the form, right? There's bullets and whatever, but still some of us opted to send questions, and some of them are very similar to this. One of the things that I see that I don't know if this is a question or a comment, but it's kind of about development and the idea that are there new responsibilities that you'd like to take on? I mean, I hesitate to ask that question without really having a mechanism for making that come true, right? We've talked for a long time about there's not a career ladder. You mentioned it, Sheri, about the LA2s, LA3s, some of them feeling frustrated about not being able to really develop into in a different role. So I don't know what to do with that, right?
Yep, it's a good comment, Jackie, because this is something we've been talking about for a long time. It's, we hire really smart, highly educated people into roles that, and I'm talking specifically about our Library Assistant 2 and Library Assistant 3 positions, that a 2-year degree is what is required for those positions. And therefore, we have to decide, what are we going to do? Because not talking about development doesn't help either. Yep. So we have to know that when we talk about development to these individuals, that could mean that development means not here at the University of Minnesota Libraries. And that's hard. but really they could leave. I know we've had a number of our people, not this year, but in previous years, LA2s, LA3s, who have left and gone on to other things. I know there's people at Bethel. And so maybe that, I always think that there's an opportunity for them to find a niche maybe somewhere else. And then if they go get experience, and then they can come back in another aspect maybe. But yeah, we really don't have a career ladder. It's tough here. We have a big jump between our library associate 2s and 3s, and we have very little civil service library associate work. And then you jump right into our librarian ranks. So our career ladder is hard. I agree.
It's particularly.
Yep, go ahead, Mark.
Oh, it's particularly rough during a hiring freeze. 'Cause in the past, I've always said, I will support you if you're looking for other jobs. I'll give you a strong reference, and please, I encourage you to do this. But now, and I still do that, but now it's like my knuckles are going white, because if they do resign, then we may be stuck for a while.
Okay, so that's a good comment, Mark, because the university has changed their language from a hiring freeze to a hiring pause. So we really never had a hiring freeze, because really in reality, a hiring freeze means no one can hire. Well, that's never been the case. We've always had the exception process. And we went probably about 9 months at the libraries where we were not hiring anyone, because we didn't know what our budget was going to look like. And I didn't think it was fair to hire somebody and then have to turn around and lay them off because we were having budget cuts. Now we are slowly getting back into that hiring process. So please don't hold off because you're afraid you won't have the ability to hire. We can make an argument.
Don't worry, I'm not.
We can make an argument for hiring through that exception process. That, we can't do excessive hiring, but we have been able to advertise for a part-time LA2 at the Arboretum. They're in the process of hiring that one. And as most of you know, we've got our institutional archivist position that is out there that has a lot of applicants. That's all I can say right now.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome, Eric. But
it hasn't even been posted, right?
I know. Officially, we haven't even started recruiting for it. And last I looked, we had 30 some applicants for it. I know. So we will make things work. I understand that, some of the word's not coming to me. The work that Mark and Emily do, the people that are, on site and answering all of our questions, and, that's where we are struggling. And Jackie, that's where we're struggling with our staffing. And we need to make sure that is not an area where we want to decrease our numbers. Kirsten, did you have a question?
Yeah, it's more maybe a comment, and I guess just a larger, where I've been thinking a lot about bridging, and we're in different structures to different places, and we're gonna do even more of that. And so perhaps where I'm struggling right now is doing a little bridging of what we have done in the past. And a lot of things on the sheet are not new, as you've mentioned.
Right.
But people might see it as it's new, but not new. And so I guess I throw it out there that it might be helpful to have some sort of bridging discussions in terms of how this actually plays out when people are actually, there's a lot of theory here in some ways. And so how does this then, when you're actually having the conversation, what's really different from last year? Probably not a lot, but I think that I'm just worried that we just have a lot of churn, and that might be something that would be helpful. And it'd be helpful for me to help me think through what is actually changing, or what is really new in this process, rather than reframing.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right, not much is new. I would say what is new is if we go back to the original document, and we can emphasize that it is more or less the focus on reasonable expectations. And so that is an area where we want to make sure that managers are emphasizing, and then the fact that we want to give everybody and exceeds expectations. And so those are probably the two areas where people need to focus the most, because like I said, that's going to be, our initial response to most of our people who have adapted to this. But yeah, but that's a good comment, Kirsten, to provide some more context around those.
Yeah, and I think to add on to that, just continually reminding people that it isn't about it isn't about the documentation solely. So bullet points, if you're someone who's typically enjoyed or gone through the process of doing a lot of writing, but just don't have it in you this year, it is okay. Blanket statement, it is okay to just do those bullet points. And if you're a supervisor who typically looks for that really well-written, long performance review from your employees, removing that expectation this year, that it is okay to just get those bullet points. And we really want to stress the conversation that you have, the performance conversation that you have this year is so vital, because you're able to talk through what are those challenges and thinking through how you might change a little bit of the team culture. Given all of the experiences that we've had this year and the learnings that come from it, there might be an opportunity to kind of make some changes so that there's well-being and those things like mental health and stress that are in the conversation and maybe they weren't before.
And I just thought of thanks, Ashley. I thought of something else and I'll have to admit, as I saw Stacy Trail join the group and Kirsten just asked that question, we are going to have a number of people whose performance evaluations are going to be completed by a supervisor that they have only had for a couple months. I don't know, all of a sudden Stacy's name made me think about that. So we should probably, Ashley, thanks, Stacy. We should probably add some tips, Ashley, on more or less how to get to know your people. Because, they're not going to be able to, how are they going to be able to do an evaluation when they've only known them from chances are you've known them in other aspects, but not in a performance perspective. So let's think about what we can add to this document that would help. Or I'm making up a list of new supervisors and new employees for Ashley, because right now I can't remember why I'm doing that for her, but it is on my to-do list. So I'm hoping she remembers why.
Yeah, we want to send out some useful resources
to
supervisors or people who are going to be kind of expanding your team or maybe supervising a new team, so that you can kind of hit the ground with the information that you need to kind of get into that role. So we don't want our new supervisors to get out there and then try and figure it out. We want to be able to support you. So we'll be doing some kind of compiling and sending out resources and ideas to help you make that transition.
And maybe one of the first things we can talk about is how to do your first performance evaluation with someone you've only been supervising for 2 months. Okay. Thanks. See, these groups are good. They come up with things that I hadn't necessarily thought about. Any other questions?
So I'm sorry, I put it in the
Oh.
So I have a comment or suggestion / question about what you've been saying about the bullet points. So this is certainly not new. Like we've been told before multiple times, you don't need to write a novel here, et cetera, et cetera. And I get that intellectually, but I suspect I'm not the only person who might benefit from seeing some examples of what you mean by that, because you know, one thing about performance reviews is you don't see anybody else's, at least certainly if you don't supervise anyone, you don't. So you don't really see examples of what other people are doing. And it's kind of hard to know like what is the right amount of information. I mean, I have bullet points, but they're probably way longer than what you're thinking. You know, I'm pretty sure I write a lot more than Ellen, who's on here, really wants to read. But it's really hard to gauge to me, like, what is that key thing? What is the thing you're looking to see there in order to start that conversation?
Yep.
What is the most important thing to do? And even just having some examples might help. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, and we can work on that. Thank you for that suggestion. And it's not going to be a one size fits all, but we can come up with what we mean by bullet points. Thank you. And yeah, we have been saying that, but you're right. We haven't really said, what does that mean? Because I know what bullet points to Wendy meant, and it wasn't what bullet points to me meant. We had two.
Exactly. And,
Yep.
and while the stakes are not necessarily that big, you know, in terms of, you know, merit increases or whatever, especially this year or whatever, still, it's like, it's the only written record of our performance. So it's kind of hard, not for me anyway, maybe it's just my personality, but it's hard for me to just blow it off or just do it at the minimal level.
And I want to emphasize that you don't have to. You know, you don't have to write bullet points if you don't want to. You know, if you feel more comfortable writing, you know, write as much as you want. And Ellen gets to decide how much she needs to read. But in some instances, what I don't want to happen is I don't want people doing a performance review because they don't have the time to write everything. And that's where we've been running into that for, I don't know, for years, especially with people that supervise a lot of individuals. Yep. Ellen wrote, I have always thought that the employee should lead on type and depth of their written portion. Mm-hmm. That's a good, I like that. I like that wording, Ellen. Thank you. Let's see if there's other questions in here. Nope, I don't see any other ones in the chat. Anyone else? I heard someone, but I didn't see who it was.
I started saying something, but I thought someone else was.
No. Go ahead, Mark.
I just had a thought, which I think is reflected in the first document we were looking at a little bit, which is that, you know, before the pandemic, I was working on performance issues with staff that often involved in real life stuff, like, you know, you know, when people are working, you shouldn't go to their office and bother them too much because they need to get stuff done, you know, things like that. Behavioral things, I don't know how to describe it.
Yep.
And that's largely been suspended by the pandemic in many ways, because some people are working from home, et cetera. And also, you know, you have to have compassion for what they're doing. And so I'm in my brain, I don't know how to express this, because that's kind of been suspended and it's not something that I'm giving them feedback about because there's no context for that anymore. It may become difficult if when we all return to working on site to resume some of that. I don't know.
Yep, but so what I would do rather than ignoring the issue, I would say this hasn't, you know, because of the situation we're in, you know, obviously there hasn't been concerns around this, but I wouldn't ignore it altogether because like you said, and it may, you know, it may not resurface.
Right.
But it's not something you need to, I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it, but I would also acknowledge the reason that you're not talking about it.
Right. And yeah, the compassion comment I had was that there are performance issues that involve the pandemic, but I feel a little uncomfortable really leaning on people or sort of enforcing really strong expectations when they have so much else to deal with. And it would be hard for me to sort of, you know, reflect that in the written document or even in my weekly meetings or whatever, talk about it in that sort of managerial way. I don't know, it's hard for me to express what I'm thinking, but.
So I was not on here. I was talking to somebody this week and we were talking about being human, you know, and I think that is what is important. And sometimes you have to take that manager hat off and just be human and respond and talk as if you are one human to another. Because, you know, unfortunately, you know, we still have work that has to get done. And so this is where it's hard. We have to manage our expectations as an organization and also manage what is happening in the lives of our employees. But, you know, for the most part, I think all of you that are managers understand what is related to our current situation and what is a holdover from just, I don't want to say a behavior that is something that is unacceptable. And if you don't, guess what? That's what Jean-Laurie and Kathleen and I are here for, is to help work through those, to say, whoa, you know what, let's just back off on that one for a while. Or,
Yep.
you know, is this a one? Is this a repetitive? Is this so?
Yes, John really helped me with a very awkward situation, which you're aware of. That happened a few months ago, and I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I would have to say, you know, and remember, you know, managers may be doing this just once or twice. This is something that we do, you know, more than once or twice, and so probably have a bigger treasure chest of alternatives and options that you may not have thought of. But again, you know, this shouldn't be the first time. I keep hitting a bar on the bottom of my desk, if you guys can hear that rattling noise, because for some reason today I just cannot sit still. So I'm moving all over the place. All right, this is good discussion, thank you. Any other thoughts, questions? And sometimes we veer off the performance evaluation topic. That's what happens when you get stuck with me for an hour. And as we've kind of hinted, there will be more information forthcoming about what we're going to do for fiscal year 22. A little hint, it involves an online process. I know, I'm so excited. Bye-bye paper.
Future is here, Sheri.
I know, we're going to get into the last century.
I was also going to send an email to ask about it.
Yeah, no, yep. Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, some of the university has been been using an online process for a really long time. And thankfully, they have offered that version of that process for other departments to jump on and use, and we have decided to be a part of that. So I'm very, very excited. But that's more in Ashley's camp than mine. I just get to announce it and take all her thunder. Anything else? Otherwise, we can give people the gift of 15 minutes. Okay, well, if you think of something afterwards, send me a note, send Ashley a note, and we'll figure it out. Christina, can you hold on for a little bit? Okay, otherwise, everyone, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Sheri, thanks, Ashley. Bye.
You're welcome.